Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is a Bulgarian-American author, poet, and publisher who lives in Kentucky. She is the founder of AdSense Publishing, has written poems in both the English and Bulgarian languages, and is the author of a nonfiction book about poetry book production titled The Poet's Guide to Publishing: How to Conceive, Arrange, Edit, Publish, and Market a Book of Poetry. Her name is Katerina Stoykova, and my interview with Katerina will follow the note-taking sounds. Katerina Stoykova, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for this kind invitation.
You migrated from Bulgaria back when it was a communist and Soviet puppet state country to the United States, and you now live in Kentucky. What was the biggest culture shock for you when you arrived in the United States, and what do you love most about Kentucky?
Well, the biggest culture shock was that I did not like the food, at least not initially. Everything tasted different to me. And, so basically I had to get used to every single thing. I think that being in the United States or another foreign country, any foreign country for that matter, one of the biggest gifts is the fact that you have to make decisions about everything all over again. What you want to eat, how you want to cross the street, what car you want to drive, how you're going to spend your time, your money, how you're going to make money. So immigrating gives you, besides more opportunities, gives you another brain and another personality also. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And Kentucky felt like real home to me. For whatever reason, I had changed like 5 or 6 states before that, and it always felt like another American town to me. But as soon as I stepped into Lexington, Kentucky, I felt, I think I'm going to stay here a while. And it's true, I've stayed here for over 20 years now.
Feel free to tell our listeners more about yourself.
Absolutely, I would love to. I'm an author. I'm an author of various genres of books. My latest are the poetry book Between a Birdcage and a Birdhouse that came out from 2022 from the University Press of Kentucky, and the nonfiction book The Poet's Guide to Publishing: How to Conceive, Arrange, Edit, Publish, and Market a Book of Poetry. And that came out from McFarland Publishing. I'm a publisher myself. 15 years ago, I started AdSense Publishing, independent press for brilliant voices, and we have published over 100 books through that press, a lot of them poetry books, but we also have published short story collections, novellas, novels, memoirs, and other genres, and a few translations also. I'm a translator. My goal is to translate a poetry book a year from either Bulgarian into English or English into Bulgarian. I enjoyed that challenge, this puzzle of literary translation. I like it very much. It teaches me a lot also. I also am a founder of a podcast and a radio show. It's called Accents, and currently, over the last 6 months, it has been on hiatus, but it has been going on since 2009. Currently, I'm the president of the Kentucky State Poetry Society. This year and next year is my turn to serve our vibrant literary community, and that's exciting to me. And I'm also a screenwriter and an actress, together with Tom Sutherland, the director Tom Sutherland, we have made two full-length narrative feature films, and we're about to start the third one. I think this is, in a nutshell.
As you mentioned in your introduction, your nonfiction book that was published last year is titled The Poet's Guide to Publishing: How to Conceive, Arrange, Edit, Publish, and Market a Book of Poetry. Without spoiling too much of that, what is it, what is it about?
Well, this book is designed for the poet who is on a journey from facing a pile of poems to celebrating at the book launch. So many people write for a long time and develop a pile of poems, and they don't know what to do next. So when they have accumulated a volume of work, this guide is designed to meet you where you are. And then from that point on, to give you step-by-step instructions or guide on how to finish your book and how to find a publisher, and what to do next, basically. So each section, which there are 5 sections, the process is organized in 5 sections because I have found 5 distinct phases of conceiving, arranging, editing, and publishing and promoting. And the thing is that every stage requires different skills and different personality traits. So the book addresses that.
What motivated you to write a nonfiction book about publishing poetry?
Well, I have been teaching poetry, various classes for quite some time, maybe for like 10 years. And I found myself repeating the same things, repeating, uh, and I thought that it's time for me to put them in writing in a way that can help more people. Um, yeah. Uh, and, you know, for any kind of book, in order to complete any kind of book, you really need a strong desire to do it because more often than not, nobody is knocking on your door asking you for it. So I wanted to do it because I wanted to be considered an expert in the field. And I also don't want, I don't want my knowledge to be lost. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. What are some common mistakes that new poets make when writing and publishing poetry books, and how can poets who are just starting out avoid each of those mistakes?
Well, the poets who are just starting out, I guess they need to know what they want. If poets who are just starting out and they want to develop as poets, um, I would say that they should find a poetry group. They should find a poetry group to belong to uh, find peers where they can do the big three. The big three are reading, writing, and receiving feedback. And I think it's impossible for a writer of any genre really to develop without engaging in those three. So writing in isolation would be one pitfall. Um, and another, let me think about it because it just disappeared from my head. Yeah, another pitfall would be waiting too long. Waiting, I mean, I'm just gonna come out and say it, waiting until you retire to start writing. Developing as a writer takes a long time. I'm not saying quit your job and start writing right now. What I'm saying is figure out how to make writing and your development as a writer part of your daily life, or for the very least, part of your year, your the cycle. Try to produce something every year. And another thing that could be considered a pitfall is that people just don't read enough because poetry is big. It is very big, and there is space for all sorts of poetry and all sorts of genres. And one very big gift to me as a writer, as a poet, was that I came to the United States and I saw all sorts of poems. So sometimes you need to see what is possible before you write what you need to write.
You've written poetry in both the English and Bulgarian languages, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you write a poetry book in Arabic as well?
I did not write a poetry book in Arabic, but someone translated selected poems of mine into Arabic.
Okay, okay. I was reading through your biography information, and I wasn't totally sure, but you've written poetry in both English and Bulgarian.
Right.
And
Yeah.
without spoiling too much about the poetry books that you've written, what are some of them called, and what are some common themes behind each of your poetry books, if they have any?
Yeah, there are, of course, some threads. One common thread is immigration, the sense of being displaced, the sense of living in two places and thinking in two different languages. Another theme is workaholism, which is mostly American disease that I contracted shortly upon immigration. So I write a lot about work and people's relationship with work and obsession with work. I write about relationships with other people and with one's self and how to understand each other and ourselves better. These are some of my themes.
Aside from the languages themselves being different, are there any differences between how you write poetry in English compared to how you write poetry in Bulgarian?
You know, Aaron, different years, I will give you different answers. Let's see what I think now. Um, when I spent a lot of time in the United States, I tend to speak in English more um, because that's the context of my daily life. And when I go in Bulgaria, I need a few days and weeks in order to switch languages. So um, basically, whatever I'm writing in, regardless of what language I'm writing in, I would encounter words or expressions that are in the other language and pop up in the other language. And so I don't break the flow. I would write it down as it comes. And then in editing, I would see how I can make the poem in one language only, how I can edit it such a way. Additionally, I try to make sure that everything I write in the poetry at least, I translate between the languages and publish it in both countries. Not everything works, but um, I think that most things carry all right from one language to another.
What do you love most about poetry?
What I love most about poetry is its ability to hold emotions. I mean, I've heard people say that people read nonfiction for the information and uh, literature for the emotion, but poems, they're kind of like these puzzles of contained strong emotions. And I think all literary works help you connect with a story, but I think that lyrical poetry especially helps you connect with an emotion above anything else. And also, poetry helps you understand yourself better. I believe that. Yeah. And another thing that I love about poetry is that anything can happen in a poem and it makes you have tremendous leaps of imagination, and you can really see intimately into somebody else, into another human being. And we're not unique. We like to think that we're unique, but actually, to know another person often is to know yourself better. And I think writing is about self knowledge, and I believe that poetry, good poetry, does that better than anything else.
Now, as I understand it, most, if not all, of your books are published by different publishers than your own, AdSense Publishing. What are some publishers who have published your books?
In the United States, my publishers are McFarland, University Press of Kentucky, um, Broadstone Books, and Finishing Line Press. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. I don't think so. And in Bulgaria, uh, publishing house Science and ICU are the two publishers that have taken very good care of my books.
Do you have a typical daily or semi daily writing routine? And if so, what is that like for you?
I do, and I am pretty obsessive about it. And if I'm not able to um, do that routine, then my whole day is off. So uh, my husband is very accommodating to make sure that I can get my writing done. I believe in setting writing goals. So once a month, like the last week of a month, I plan my next month. I see what I need to do, what I need to get done um, in all spheres of my life because uh, writing happens while we live. So it's not outside of life. The rest of it also needs to be taken into consideration. So I have a whiteboard in which I write the important things that I need to accomplish that month. And based on what is going on, I see how much creative work I can get done. And based on how much creative work I can get done, then I make a monthly creative goal, one or more. On good month, I have more than one. So, and at that point, I know how to organize my time and figure out if this is my monthly goal, then what can I do every day? And I need to get engaged with my writing and my creative goal every day in some way, even if for a little bit. I never say I'm going to sit down and write. That I believe is too much pressure. I might say something like, I'm going to go journal. Uh, but whenever I have a project which is close to a completion, then it's a whole lot easier. I hope that helps.
I have a couple more questions to finish out this interview. You've been involved in independent feature films, including being a co screenwriter for Proud Citizen and the lead actress in Fort Maria. What were each of those films about, and what is it like to screenwrite and act in independent films?
Yeah, I acted in the lead role in both those movies. Um, writing is very solitary act. I need to close all doors and ideally nobody else will be in the house, right? So this is very solitary and everything is up to me. So there is power in that, but also there is a lot of responsibility and a lot of solitude in movie. um, it's group art. It's a whole team, and a lot of trust is involved because you become very vulnerable on screen, and you have to trust your director and the editor of the movie that they'll put only the best there, and that you will look good in any way that. In any meaning of the expression that you will look good. Um, about acting, I have acted, but I don't consider myself an actress. both those films were largely improvised. So that's why they look so naturalistic and the dialogue is so natural. But we knew what is we had an outline, of course, and we knew what we wanted to say with the film. But in every one of the scenes, the director would give us the assignment and the idea of what needs to be conveyed and what's the goal of the scene, and then we would be filmed trying out different things until we found our dialogue and we found our um, until we found what was natural for the scene and until we were successful and of course until he was pleased with what he was receiving. So it was fascinating, frightening experience, fascinating all the way through, and frightening a lot more at the beginning than at the end. For other people, of course, the experience might be different. For me, it gave me an opportunity to be creative in a different way. And I value that, Aaron. You know, the older we get, new experiences are farther and fewer between. So, an opportunity to be a part of the movie, what fun! And then, of course, we had um, local launch in the Kentucky Theater, and the films got screened all over the country in various festivals. And that was an experience also to go and watch the movie with public, with people who don't know you in Florida or in Oregon or in other places around the country. So it gave me an opportunity to travel a little bit and the opportunity to be at a film festival and see films, independent films, before anybody else practically sees them. That I consider both fun and privilege experience.
Although your podcast AdSense is currently on hiatus, what can listeners expect from a typical episode of your podcast, which is produced by WUKY FM, which is the public radio station in Lexington, Kentucky?
I like to interview writers more often than not, writers with new books. And I like to ask them about their craft. I like to ask them about their writing process, about their editing process, about the process of finding a publisher. I also like to uh, look at their CV to see if there is anything fascinating and interesting that I want to ask them. And uh, I like for both parties to have a lot of fun and to feel relaxed and to also give information to the listeners. I have a question that I ask everybody who teaches creative writing, and that is, what is the most important thing you teach your writing? If there is one thing you want your students to remember from your class or your workshop, what is it? So I have collection of answers from really wonderful writers.
Katerina, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were a very insightful guest.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and I wish for you wonderful, fun time with everything you do and your podcast.
It was amazing to interview Katerina about her work, and I'll include a link to her podcast in the text description of the episode. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2025, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.